The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest building ever made. It stood at the center of a space station that floated between three suns. The hall could hold 10,000 beings from across the galaxy. Today, it was full. Representatives from 800 species sat in their assigned places. The air smelled of different atmospheres, mixed together by giant machines in the walls. Ambassador Park sat in the human section. It was small. Humanity had only 18 seats in this great hall. They were placed near the back, far from the central platform where important decisions were made. Did not mind. She had sat in this same seat for 12 years. She was used to being far away from power. Today was different. Today, the Council would vote on something called the Humanity Containment Act. Had read every word of the document. It would limit where humans could travel. It would restrict how many colonies they could build. It would place monitors on all human ships. It would treat humanity like dangerous animals that needed to be watched. The Dominion had written this act. There were tall beings with 4 arms and skin like gray stone. They had been afraid of humans since first contact, 200 years ago. Humans were too fast, they said. Humans bred too quickly. Humans were too clever with their hands and their tools. Humans needed to be controlled before it was too late. Listened as the speaker made his case. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. Humans have expanded to 47 worlds in only 2 centuries, he said. They build ships faster than any other species. They adapt to any environment. They are a danger to the balance of our galaxy. We must act now before they become too strong to stop. Around the hall, many representatives nodded their heads or made sounds of agreement. Watched them. She saw fear in their eyes, fear of something they did not understand. When the vote came, it was not close. 847 species voted yes. Only one voted no. That single vote came from Counselor Myra of the collective. There were small beings with soft blue skin and large dark eyes. Myra had been kind to humans since the beginning. She was the only one. The result was announced. The Humanity Containment Act would become law in 30 days. Park stood up. The movement was slow and calm. She gathered the papers from her desk and placed them neatly in her bag. Then she turned to the other human representatives and gave a small nod. One by one, the humans stood. They did not speak. They did not shout or cry or make angry faces. They simply collected their things and began to walk toward the exit. The hall fell silent. 10,000 beings watched 18 humans walk away. Reached the great doors. She stopped and turned back to look at the council one last time. Her face showed nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not fear, just calm acceptance of what had happened. She bowed. It was a polite bow, the kind you give to strangers who do not deserve your respect but receive it anyway. Then she walked through the doors and was gone. In the hall, no one moved for a long moment. Then the speaker laughed. "Let them go," he said. "They will come back when they realize they need us." Counselor Myra did not laugh. She watched the empty human seats with worry in her dark eyes. She noticed something that others did not see. The humans had left everything behind. Their computers, their data files, their communication devices. Everything that connected them to the council was sitting on those empty desks. They had left it all, as if none of it mattered anymore. Across the galaxy, Admiral received a message on his command ship. The ship was called Horizon's Edge, and it was the largest vessel in the human fleet. Was an old man with gray hair and deep lines on his face. He had served in space for 40 years. The message was only 2 words: protocol silence. Closed his eyes for a moment. He had hoped this day would never come, but he had always known it might. He had prepared for it like all human commanders had prepared for it. He opened a channel to every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. His voice was steady when he spoke. "This is Admiral. Protocol silence is now active. All personnel will begin withdrawal procedures immediately. There will be no communication with non-human entities. There will be no explanation. There will be no negotiation. We are going home. The orders spread like light across the stars. On the border world of 7, Lieutenant was loading medical supplies onto his ship. He had been bringing medicine to a colony that suffered from a terrible disease. When he received the Admiral's message, he stopped loading. He looked at the medicine still sitting on the dock. Then he walked away and left it there. On the water world of Prime, Doctor was teaching alien doctors how to use a new treatment she had invented. When the order came, she stopped mid-sentence. She gathered her notes, smiled politely at the confused doctors, and left the hospital without another word. On a dozen mining stations, human engineers shut down their equipment. On 100 trade posts, human merchants closed their shops. On research stations scattered across the galaxy, human scientists turned off their computers and walked away from experiments that had taken years to build. No one explained anything. No one said goodbye. Within 72 hours, every human presence in the galaxy went dark. Trade agreements were abandoned. Military outposts were emptied. Diplomatic missions were closed. The humans simply vanished, like ghosts fading in the morning light. The Council received no demands. There were no threats. There was no list of things humans wanted before they would return. There was only silence. For the first few days, the other species laughed. The humans were having a tantrum, they said. They would calm down and come back when they got hungry. Humans were weak creatures who needed the Council's protection. Everyone knew this. But Counselor Myra did not laugh. She went to her private chamber and pulled up old records. She began to read about everything humans had done since joining the Council. The more she read, the more her worry grew. She found records of human ships patrolling dangerous borders without pay. She found reports of human doctors treating diseases on worlds that had no money for medicine. She found files about human engineers building water systems and power plants and hospitals on planets that had nothing to offer in return. For 200 years, humans had asked for almost nothing. They took the worst jobs. They accepted the smallest rewards. They helped everyone who needed help, even those who hated them. And now they were gone. Myra sat alone in her chamber as the lights of distant stars shone through her window. She understood something that the rest of the Council did not yet see. The humans had not left because they were angry. They had left because they had finally stopped hoping that things would change. And that, she knew, was far more dangerous than any war. 3 months passed since the humans walked away. At first, the galaxy barely noticed. There were so many species, so many worlds, so many ships flying between the stars. What difference could one small species make? The humans had always been quiet workers in the background. They were easy to forget. Then the problems began. On the agricultural worlds of the Dominion, the crops started to die. The plants turned brown and fell over in the fields. The farmers did not understand what was happening. These crops had grown perfectly for 50 years. Why were they failing now? A team of scientists came to investigate. They dug in the soil and studied the plants. After many days, they found the answer. The problem was in the dirt itself. Tiny living things, too small to see, had been keeping the soil healthy. These tiny things were dying. The head scientist made a report to the Council. Her voice shook as she spoke. The bacteria in our soil are artificial, she explained. They were created by human scientists 50 years ago. Our natural soil could not grow these crops. Dr. Lee designed special bacteria that changed the soil and made it fertile. But these bacteria need genetic updates every few years. Without the updates, they die. Without the bacteria, nothing will grow. The leader stared at her. Why did no one tell us this? The humans told us many times. We never listened. We never thought it was important. Across the Dominion, billions of beings began to go hungry. Director Lee had known this would happen. She had warned the government many times. She had offered to teach them how to maintain the bacteria themselves. They had refused. They did not want to learn from humans. They did not trust human knowledge. Now sat in her small apartment in the city of on Earth. She drank tea and watched the sunset through her window. She did not feel happy about what was happening to the... She only felt tired, so very tired of trying to help people who did not want to be helped. The food crisis was only the beginning. 2 weeks later, the navigation beacons began to fail. These beacons were small stations floating in space. They sent out signals that told ships where they were and how to find safe paths through dangerous areas. Without them, space travel became slow and dangerous. Captain had maintained those beacons for 20 years. She had traveled alone to the darkest corners of the galaxy, fixing broken equipment and updating old systems. It was boring work. No one thanked her for it. No one even knew her name. Now she sat in her mother's house in a small town near Seoul. She helped in the garden and cooked meals for her elderly mother. When she heard that ships were getting lost because the beacons were failing, she felt a strange kind of peace. Let them learn what we did for them, she thought. Let them finally understand. The translation systems broke next. For 200 years, beings from different worlds could talk to each other because of these systems. Human engineers had built them, and human technicians had kept them running. The machines that turned one language into another were incredibly complex. No other species had ever bothered to learn how they worked. Now those machines were failing, and no one knew how to fix them. Diplomats who had worked together for decades suddenly could not understand each other. Trade deals fell apart because buyers and sellers could not agree on terms. Arguments turned into fights because words were not translated correctly. The council called an emergency meeting, but half the representatives could not understand what the others were saying. The meeting ended in chaos. Counselor Myra watched all of this with growing fear. She had tried to warn the council, but no one would listen to her. They were a small species with little power. Her voice meant nothing. She decided to go to Earth herself. The journey took 3 weeks because so many navigation beacons were dark. Her small ship almost got lost twice in areas where the safe paths were no longer marked. When she finally reached the human home world, she was exhausted and afraid. But what she found surprised her. Earth was beautiful. Green forests covered the hills. Blue oceans sparkled under a yellow sun. Cities rose beside rivers and mountains, full of lights and life. The humans had not collapsed. They had not fallen into chaos. They were living their lives as if nothing had changed. Myra landed in a city called Seoul. A young woman met her at the landing pad. The woman smiled politely and offered to help with Myra's bags. "I am Counselor Myra of the collective," Myra said. "I need to speak with your leaders." The young woman nodded. "Of course, but they may not want to speak with you. We are not accepting visitors from the council right now." "Please," Myra said. "You must understand, the galaxy is falling apart. People are dying. We need your help." The young woman's smile did not change. "We helped for 200 years. You passed a law to put us in a cage. Now you want our help again." She shook her head slowly. "That is not how this works." Myra spent a week on Earth. She walked through the cities and towns. She saw humans laughing with their children, working in their shops, enjoying their lives. They were kind to her. They offered her food and shelter. They answered her questions with patience. But they would not negotiate. She met with a man named Han. He was a professor who studied history. He agreed to explain why the humans had left. They sat in a small garden filled with flowers, poured tea for both of them before he spoke. "For 200 years, he began, we did everything the council asked. We took the worst jobs. We patrolled the dangerous borders. We treated the sick on poor worlds. We built things that no one else wanted to build. We asked for almost nothing in return." Myra nodded. "I know, I have read the records. You were very generous." "Generous?" Smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Is that what you call it? We called it hope. We hoped that if we showed you who we really were, you would stop being afraid of us. We hoped that kindness would teach you to trust us." He set down his teacup. His old hands were steady. "We were wrong. The more we gave, the more you feared us. You looked at our kindness and thought it was a trick. You saw our patience and called it weakness. You watched us help your sick and feed your hungry, and you decided we must want something terrible in return." Myra felt shame burn in her chest. Not all of us thought that way. "No," agreed. "Not all of you, but enough of you. Enough to pass a law that would treat us like animals in a cage." He looked at her with eyes that held no anger, only a deep and endless weariness. "We are tired, counselor, tired of proving ourselves, tired of being feared for our love, tired of giving everything and receiving only suspicion in return." "What do you want?" Myra asked. "Tell me what you want and I will fight for it in the council." Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was very soft. "We want nothing from the council, not anymore. We wanted respect and you gave us chains. We wanted friendship and you gave us fear. Now we want only to be left alone." Myra returned to the council with empty hands and a heavy heart. She told them what she had learned. She begged them to apologize, to repeal the Containment Act, to show the humans that things could change. The council laughed at her. "They will come back," the speaker said. "When they see how much the galaxy needs them, they will come crawling back." But months passed and the humans did not come back. The galaxy grew darker and more dangerous. Ships disappeared. Worlds starved. Old enemies began to fight again without human peacekeepers to stop them. And still the silence continued. 6 months after the humans left, Counselor Myra began her investigation. She wanted to understand exactly what humanity had done for the galaxy. She wanted proof that she could show to the council. Maybe then they would listen. She started in the archives. The Galactic Council kept records of everything. Every trade agreement, every diplomatic mission, every small act of service was written down somewhere. Myra began to read. She read for weeks, and what she found changed everything she thought she knew about humans. The first file was about a man named Lieutenant. He had served in the Supply Corps for 15 years. His job was simple. He flew a small ship called the Gentle Dawn from world to world, delivering food and medicine to places that needed help. The records showed that had visited over 2,000 worlds. He had delivered supplies to the corners of the galaxy. He had worked through wars and disasters and plagues. He had never taken a vacation. He had never asked for extra pay. He had never complained. On one mission, his ship had been attacked by pirates. They shot holes in his hull and stole half his cargo. Did not turn back. He patched the holes with tape and prayers, flew to his destination anyway, and delivered what was left. The people on that world would have starved without him. The records also showed something else. Many of the worlds helped belong to species that hated humans. The species that called humans dangerous and primitive and threatening helped them anyway. He never let their hate stop him from doing his job. Myra found another file. This one was about Doctor, a medical researcher, had spent her entire career developing cures for alien diseases. She was one of the most brilliant scientists in the galaxy. She could have been rich. She could have been famous. Instead, she worked in small labs on forgotten worlds, treating sick people who had nothing to offer her in return. The records showed that had cured 17 different diseases, 17 plagues that had killed millions of beings across the galaxy. She had developed treatments that saved entire species from extinction. She had never patented any of her work. She had given every cure away for free. Anyone who needed it could have it. She asked for nothing. One of those cures had saved them from a terrible sickness that attacked their lungs. Without medicine, half the population would have died. The same who later wrote the Humanity Containment Act. The same who called humans too dangerous to be free. Myra put down the file. Her hands were shaking. She found more, so much more. Engineer had designed water systems that made desert worlds livable. He had spent 30 years traveling to dry, dead places and turning them into gardens. He had taught his methods to anyone who wanted to learn. He had charged nothing for his knowledge. Dozens of worlds now supported billions of lives because of his work. Worlds that belonged to species who feared humans. Worlds that had voted yes on the Containment Act. Captain had maintained the navigation beacons in the most dangerous parts of the galaxy. She had worked alone in the cold darkness of space for 20 years. She had saved countless ships from getting lost. She had never received a medal or a promotion or even a thank you letter. Ambassador Park had negotiated peace between species that had been at war for centuries. She had sat in rooms full of beings who hated each other and found ways to make them stop fighting. She had ended conflicts that had killed billions. She had received nothing but insults in return. The records went on and on. Thousands of humans doing small jobs that held the galaxy together. Teachers who educated alien children. Builders who constructed hospitals and schools. Farmers who grew food for hungry worlds. Peacekeepers who stopped fights before they became wars. None of them had asked for power. None of them had demanded respect. They had simply done their work day after day, year after year, century after century. And the galaxy had taken all of it for granted. Myra sat in the archives as the lights dimmed for the night cycle. She felt sick with shame. For 200 years, humanity had carried the galaxy on its shoulders. They had been the quiet helpers who made everything work. And in return, the galaxy had feared them, hated them, and tried to put them in chains. She understood now why the humans had left. They had not left because they were angry. Angry people make demands. Angry people want to hurt those who hurt them. The humans wanted nothing. They had simply stopped hoping that things would ever change. That was worse than anger. That was despair. Myra compiled her findings into a report. She presented it to the council. She showed them the numbers. She showed them the names. She showed them 200 years of service that humanity had given freely to a galaxy that did not deserve it. The council listened. Some of them looked uncomfortable. A few even looked ashamed, but most of them just looked annoyed. "What do you want us to do?" the speaker asked. "Apologize. We did nothing wrong. We simply protected ourselves from a threat." "What threat?" Myra asked. Her voice was sharp with frustration. "Show me one time that humans hurt another species. Show me one act of aggression. Show me one threat they ever made." The speaker had no answer, because there was no answer. Humans had never attacked anyone. They had never threatened anyone. They had never done anything except help. "Their potential for harm was obvious," another counselor said. "They breed quickly. They adapt to any environment. They are too clever. Given time, they could have dominated us all." "Could have," Myra repeated. "Could have. You passed a law to punish them for something they never did, something they might never have done. You saw a species that spent 2 centuries helping everyone around them, and you decided they must be planning something evil." She stood before the council, small and blue and alone. "We did not contain a threat. We broke the heart of the kindest species in the galaxy, and now that heart has stopped giving." The debate continued for days. Some counselors wanted to send apologies. Others wanted to offer trade deals. A few even suggested forcing the humans to return, using military pressure to end their silence. That suggestion died quickly. The humans had never been warriors, but they had learned from their centuries of border patrol. They knew how to defend themselves. Any attack on Earth would be costly, perhaps too costly. In the end, the council did nothing. They argued and debated and formed committees to study the problem. They wrote reports that no one read. They made speeches that changed nothing. And on Earth, the humans continued their quiet lives. They did not watch the council's debates. They did not care what the galaxy decided. They had made their choice. They would not make it again. Admiral stood on a hill overlooking the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. He had retired from the fleet. There was nothing left to do. A young officer found him there. She brought news from the council. They were offering concessions. They would repeal some parts of the Containment Act. They wanted to negotiate. Did not turn around. He watched the waves roll against the shore. "Tell them no," he said. "Sir, they are offering." "I know what they are offering. They are offering crumbs, small pieces of what they took from us. They still do not understand." He finally turned to face her. His old eyes were calm. "We did not leave because of the Containment Act. We left because of what the Containment Act revealed. They are afraid of us. They have always been afraid of us. No law can change that. No treaty can fix that. Until they stop being afraid, there is nothing to talk about." The young officer returned to Seoul with his message. And the silence continued. 1 year of silence. The galaxy was falling apart. The numbers told the story. Trade had dropped by 40%. 17 species had gone to war with each other. The refugee crisis on the outer rim had killed 4 million beings. Food shortages affected 200 worlds. Ships disappeared every week in sectors where the navigation beacons had gone dark. The council met every day, but nothing they did seemed to help. They tried to fix the translation systems, but no one understood how they worked. They tried to rebuild the navigation network, but their engineers could not match human designs. They tried to create new medicines, but their scientists lacked human creativity. Everything humans had built was better than what anyone else could make. Not because humans were smarter, because they had cared enough to make things that would last. They had put love into their work. That love was something the other species could not copy. Captain followed the news from her mother's house in Korea. She watched the reports of ships getting lost, of worlds going hungry, of old wars starting again. She felt no satisfaction, only a deep sadness that none of this had needed to happen. Her mother came into the room with a cup of tea. The old woman sat down beside her daughter and watched the screen for a moment. "Are you okay?" her mother asked. Thought about the question. She had spent 20 years alone in space, keeping the galaxy safe. She had missed birthdays and holidays and funerals. She had given up love and family and rest. And at the end of it all, the galaxy had decided she was a threat that needed to be contained. "I think so," she said. "I think I am finally okay." Her mother nodded. She understood. She did not need to say more. On the council station, Counselor Myra prepared for the most important speech of her life. She had spent months gathering evidence. She had talked to humans on Earth. She had studied 200 years of history. Now she was ready to tell the truth. The great hall was full when she took the central platform. 10,000 beings watched her with eyes that ranged from curious to hostile. The delegation sat in their usual place, their stone faces showing nothing. Myra took a deep breath and began. 1 year ago, humanity walked out of this hall. They did not make demands. They did not issue threats. They simply left. And since that day, our galaxy has been dying. She paused to let the words sink in. We told ourselves stories about humans. We said they were dangerous because they bred quickly. We said they were threatening because they adapted to any world. We said they needed to be controlled before they became too powerful. Myra's voice grew stronger. But we never asked the most important question. If humans were so dangerous, why did they spend 2 centuries helping us? Why did they cure our diseases without asking for payment? Why did they feed our hungry and build our roads and patrol our borders? Why did they give and give and give and never demand anything in return? The hall was silent. No one moved. I will tell you why, because they are not like us. They do not think like us. When they see someone suffering, they do not calculate whether helping will give them an advantage. They simply help. When they see a problem, they do not wait for someone to pay them to fix it. They simply fix it. This is their nature. This is who they are. Myra turned to face the delegation directly. And we looked at this nature and called it a trick. We saw their endless kindness and decided it must be a lie. We watched them build a better galaxy, and we convinced ourselves they must have evil plans, because we could not imagine anyone being good without wanting something in return. The speaker rose to object, but Myra kept talking. The humans did not leave because of the Containment Act. They left because of what the act revealed about us. We showed them who we really are. We showed them that no matter how much they gave, no matter how long they helped, we would never trust them. We would never see them as friends. We would only see them as threats. She felt tears in her large dark eyes, but she did not let them fall. They are not coming back. I have spoken to their leaders. I have looked into their eyes. The hope is gone. For 200 years they believed that kindness could change us. Now they know the truth. We will never change. We will always be afraid of what we do not understand. Myra stood alone on the platform, small and blue against the vastness of the hall. In 100 years, scholars will study what happened here. They will read about a species that gave everything to a galaxy that gave nothing back. They will learn about doctors who cured plagues for free, and engineers who built worlds without payment, and soldiers who died protecting people who hated them. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper, but in the perfect silence of the hall, everyone heard her. And those scholars will ask one question. They will ask how we could be so blind, how we could look at such obvious love and see only danger, how we could take such incredible gifts and call them threats. She looked around the hall one last time. I do not have an answer for them. I do not think any of us do. We were fools, and now we must live with what our foolishness has cost us. Myra stepped down from the platform. No one spoke as she walked back to her seat. The hall remained silent for a long time. Finally, the speaker stood. His gray face was hard to read, but his voice was different than before. Some of the arrogance was gone. "What would you have us do?" he asked. "The humans will not talk to us. They will not negotiate. What can we do?" Myra did not look at him when she answered. "Learn to live without them. Learn to do the things they did for us. Learn to be kind without expecting reward. Learn to help without asking for power." She finally met his eyes. "Learn to be what they tried to teach us to be." The council session ended without any decisions, but something had changed. The certainty was gone. The easy confidence that the humans would eventually return had faded. For the first time, the galaxy understood that some mistakes cannot be undone. On Earth, life continued. The seasons changed. Children grew up. Old people passed away. The humans built their own civilization, separate from the galaxy that had rejected them. Admiral died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by family. Captain got married and had children. Director Lee wrote books about her work that became required reading in human schools. Doctor trained a new generation of doctors who would serve humanity instead of the stars. They did not forget what had happened. They simply chose to move forward. The past was past. The future belonged to them. But sometimes, late at night, they would look up at the stars and remember. They would remember the worlds they had helped and the people they had saved. They would remember the hope they had carried for 200 years. And they would feel sad, not angry, just sad. Because they had wanted so badly to believe that kindness was enough. They had wanted to prove that love could overcome fear. They had wanted to show the galaxy that different species could live together in peace. They had been wrong. And that was the heaviest weight of all. 10 years had passed since the humans walked away. The galaxy had changed. Some things had gotten better. Some things had gotten worse, but nothing was the same as before. The Dominion had learned to grow their own food. It took 5 years and millions of deaths, but they finally understood how to care for their own soil. They did not forget who had given them that soil in the first place. They no longer spoke of humans as dangerous. They spoke of them with quiet shame. The navigation beacons had been rebuilt, but they were not as good as the human designs. Ships still got lost sometimes in the dark spaces between stars. Captains learned to be more careful. They learned that space was not as safe as they had believed. The translation systems worked again, but mistakes were common. Diplomats learned to speak slowly and repeat themselves. They learned that understanding each other was harder than they had thought. Counselor Myra had become the most powerful voice in the council. Her speech 10 years ago had changed everything. Species that once ignored the now listened when she spoke. She used her influence to push for kindness. She created programs to help poor worlds. She built hospitals and schools in places that had been forgotten. She tried to make the galaxy into what the humans had dreamed it could be. But she was growing old. Her blue skin had faded to gray. Her large eyes were tired. She knew she did not have much time left. One day, a young scholar came to see her. The scholar's name was. She had spent 5 years studying human history. She wanted to understand what had happened and why. Myra agreed to help her. Together, they planned a trip to Earth. The journey was long. Even with the new beacons, travel was slower than before. Spent the time reading old human books that Myra had collected. She read about human history, about their wars and their art and their dreams. She began to understand why the galaxy had feared them. Humans were not afraid of anything. They charged into danger without hesitation. They faced death with strange calmness. They believed they could change the universe if they tried hard enough. This confidence was terrifying to species who had learned to be careful and cautious. But that same confidence made them incredible builders. They did not accept that something was impossible. They just kept trying until they found a way. Earth appeared on the like a blue jewel floating in darkness. Had never seen anything so beautiful. Her was gray and rocky. Earth looked like a dream. They landed in a city called. It sat beside a great ocean that sparkled in the sunlight. The buildings were tall and graceful. Gardens grew on every rooftop. The air smelled clean and fresh. Humans walked through the streets, going about their lives. They smiled at Myra. Some children pointed and whispered about the strange aliens, but their parents hushed them and taught them to be polite. Notice something strange. The humans did not seem angry. They did not seem bitter or resentful. They just seemed peaceful. Myra had arranged a meeting with Professor Han. He was very old now, one of the last who remembered the council and the time before the silence. He agreed to speak with them. They met in his garden. Cherry trees were blooming, filling the air with pink petals. Sat in a simple chair, wrapped in a warm blanket. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were still bright. "Thank you for seeing us," Myra said. She was crying. She had not expected to cry, but seeing again after so many years broke something inside her. Smiled at her. "Old friend, it is good to see you. I am glad you kept fighting." Bowed respectfully. "Professor, I have come to learn. I want to understand why this happened. I want to write a history that will teach others." Looked at her for a long moment. "Why do you want to understand?" "Because I am ashamed," said. "I am ashamed of what my people did. I want to make sure it never happens again." Nodded slowly. "That is a good answer. Shame is where healing begins." He closed his eyes and was quiet for a while, thought he might have fallen asleep, but then he spoke. "We were not perfect. Humans have done terrible things to each other throughout our history. We have been cruel and selfish and stupid, but we have also learned. Each generation taught the next to be better. Each century brought us closer to what we could be." He opened his eyes and looked at the cherry blossoms falling around them. "When we joined the galaxy, we thought we could share what we had learned. We thought we could help others avoid our mistakes. We thought kindness was a language everyone could understand." His voice grew soft. "We were naive. Not everyone wants to be taught. Not everyone trusts a helping hand. Some will always see generosity as a trick and patience as weakness." Leaned forward. "Were you angry when you left?" Considered the question carefully. "No, we were never angry. Anger comes from hope. You get angry at people because you believe they can change. We had stopped believing. He turned to look at her directly. We were tired, that is all. Tired of explaining ourselves. Tired of proving we meant no harm. Tired of giving everything and being told it was not enough. After 200 years, we simply ran out of energy to keep trying. Felt tears on her own face. She had not cried in many years, did not cry easily, but she could not stop herself. "Is there any hope?" she asked. "Will you ever come back?" Was quiet for a long time. The cherry blossoms continued to fall. "Hope is a strange thing," he finally said. "It dies slowly, but it can be born again." He looked at Myra, then back at. "The council that hurt us is changing. I have watched. New leaders are rising. Species that were cruel are learning to be kind. The galaxy is becoming what we always dreamed it could be." He smiled, and for a moment he looked young again. "Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps we did not fail after all. We planted seeds that we thought had died, but seeds can sleep for a long time underground. Maybe they are finally starting to grow." Returned to her world and spent years writing her history. She told the truth about what had happened. She did not blame only the council. She showed how fear had spread through the galaxy like a disease. She showed how small unkindnesses had built into a wall that separated species from each other. But she also showed how one species had tried to tear down that wall. She showed 200 years of kindness and patience and hope. She showed what the galaxy had lost when that hope finally died. Her book became required reading across the galaxy. Young beings from 1,000 worlds learned about the humans who had helped everyone and asked for nothing. They learned about the silence that had taught their parents to listen. The book had a title that had thought about for a long time. It was simple, but it said everything that needed to be said. She called it "The Silence That Taught Us to Listen." 20 years after the humans left, the first request came. It was a small thing. A world on the edge of the galaxy was dying from a disease no one could cure. Their leaders swallowed their pride and sent a message to Earth. They did not demand help. They did not expect anything. They simply asked. A young human doctor named read the message. She thought about her grandmother, doctor, who had cured diseases for free. She thought about everything her grandmother had taught her. Did not ask for permission. She simply packed her medical supplies and flew her ship toward the stars. She was the first, but she was not the last. One by one, humans began to return to the galaxy. Not as servants, not as helpers who expected nothing. They came as equals, offering their hands to those who had finally learned to accept help without fear. They did not forget what had happened, but they chose to forgive. Because that, in the end, was who they were. And this time, the galaxy was ready to understand.